guys, this is the graduation video for my workshop Mesoterica, where the students were initiated out of the first level of teachings, which is story, duality, subjective, and to the second level where we tell the truth with myth and parable. And it's the first objective, and then one day we'll get to the third level, which is symbols, which are told with no words whatsoever. But we're starting this new process of unpacking myths and parables to make them more digestible, and it is just phenomenal how much truth and how much epic psychological wisdom is hidden completely in plain sight, always has been, but only the initiates can crack the code. So I hope you get off on this lecture. We deeply unpack Eros and Psyche. It's fucking sick. And if you want to hear more stuff like this, please drop me a comment, because I'd always planned on doing a part 2 of Mesoterica where we do a call like this every 2 weeks, but I need to hear from you guys if this is something you want. So drop it in the comments and I'll see you soon. Enjoy it. It's so good. If we have time for both, we'll do both, but we'll definitely start with Eros and Psyche because it is a little bit more special. I think that I love the Narcissus one, but Eros and Psyche is some quantum shit. All right. So just so you guys know, if you want to know more about Greek mythology, Ovid Metamorphoses is a good place to start. We're going to be reading today just from straight up Wikipedia, So let me do this. And so here we have, delete everything out of here. So sometimes the names are a little bit different, like in the story of Narcissus and Echo. It was Zeus and it was Hera that made Echo mute. But in other, I don't really know like what the difference is, but then in other stories, you'll hear it being called Juno and Jupiter instead of Zeus and Hera. And in this situation here, they're saying Cupid and Psyche, but it is Eros and Psyche. So I'm just going to we're not going to be reading straight from Wikipedia, but I just want to make sure that I don't forget any parts to the story as I go off. So once a king and a queen, rulers of an unnamed city, who had 3 daughters of conspicuous beauty, and the youngest and most beautiful was Psyche. So we hear this word psyche a lot, the growth of the psyche. Now, the reason why this daughter is called Psyche. Psyche represents the deepest desire of the human, is to have the full flowering of the psyche. Now, something to note here is that Psyche is not a god. So Psyche is just a really beautiful woman, really beautiful potential, but not actually a god. Make sense? Doesn't have to make all this sense, but we'll just take this one piece at a time. And so what happened is that all of the admirers, I guess we'll just read up here. The youngest and most beautiful was Psyche, whose admirers, neglecting the proper worship of Aphrodite, instead prayed and made offerings to her. So this is where Psyche started to develop her beef with Aphrodite, because Aphrodite is actually a god, is the fully conscious, the fully formed flower, the goddess of Venus and love and beauty. She's the real deal. She's actually a god. She actually is divine. Psyche just has a lot of the potential, but she's not actually divine. And this is how it is for us in our minds. When we're saying, oh, we're all gods, like, no, that's worshiping Psyche instead of worshiping Aphrodite. The god can come down to you. You can't go up to the god. It would be like a general or a lieutenant, whatever a low-ranking army official is, a lieutenant saying, I'm a general. No, you have general potential, but you haven't done the work. You haven't climbed the ranks. You're not a general, and insubordination. Don't you dare call yourself that. But if you work hard and you put yourself in the right conditions, general powers can come down to you. So Aphrodite's son is Eros, who is also called Cupid. Easy to remember because Cupid shoots arrows. Now, the story of how Eros became Eros is pretty interesting. We won't go into it here, but basically there was like a riddle about, what's the most powerful weapon that could be used against any of the gods, who's actually the most powerful of all the gods. And Cupid, who looks like a little baby, like how could this be any threat to anybody? But if you get shot by Cupid's arrow, everybody is subject to falling in love. And when you fall in love, you become like a little baby again, like the world is bright and new and just like, it's like you've never eaten this food before. It's like you've never heard this song before. It's like you never felt any pain. You're just transported back to what it was like to like be a little baby. And so that's why Cupid is a really interesting symbol, because this little baby really is a threat to all of us, because when you're in love, you'll do anything. You've seen all kinds of like the wealthiest and most successful people ditching everything to run off with somebody that they were in love with. And the word eros is where we get the word erotic from. So the erotic is a part of the psyche that a lot of people don't know about. And this connection in the story between Eros and Psyche, the erotic and the psyche, how the erotic activates the psyche and brings it to a god level, is what's hidden in plain sight in this story. And so what we have here, so people were saying that Psyche was the second coming of Venus, or the daughter of Venus, from an unseemly union between the goddess and the mortal. Venus is offended and commissions Cupid, or Eros, to work her revenge. So the people were saying like, hey, it's the second coming of Aphrodite. Aphrodite must have fucked a human, and this is how we got Psyche. And Aphrodite's like, I would never. So she's pissed because people are worshiping the mind instead of that who made the mind. So Cupid is sent to shoot Psyche with an arrow so that she may fall in love with something hideous. But instead, he scratches himself with his own arrow, which makes any living thing fall in love with the first thing that it sees. Consequently, he falls deeply in love with Psyche and disobeys his mother's order. So Cupid is not all of these gods. Is something that I love about mythology, is mythology just starts at this level that like, look, gods are not all holy and that they do crazy things. They get revenge, they rape, they pillage, and they make mistakes, and they have weak spots. This is what creates the balance of life. Rebecca's just joining us and we're talking about Eros and Psyche. We're unpacking a myth here. So Cupid scratches himself with the dart because gods make mistakes, and he falls in love with Psyche instead of making Psyche fall in love with someone hideous. Now, the reason why Eros and Psyche are now in love with each other, or at least that Eros is completely in love with Psyche, is because this is the perfect combination. When you combine pleasure and desire, Eros is really about desire. When you combine desire with the mind, it doesn't matter what world your body is in. You are in an erotic heaven at all times, no matter what. When desire meets the psyche and they know how to be together, you're talking about a love for life. You're talking about living with your head in the clouds, but in a good way, no matter where your physical body is. Like, you are able to supply all of your own pleasure and all of your own joy when you have these two together. So there is the major plot twist in this myth, okay? So although her two humanly beautiful sisters have married, Psyche has yet to find love, because the mind, the psyche, what has the ability to grow so big, it needs, not anyone is going to cut it. It's going to take something really, really special to make the mind bloom. It can't just be anybody. So her father, Psyche's father, suspects that the gods are mad at them and consults the oracle of Apollo. And the response is unsettling. The king is to expect not having a human son-in-law. His daughter Psyche is not going to marry some nice boy next door with Kenergy. It's going to be with the moment, right, Rebecca? Kenergy, the moment. But a dragon-like creature who harasses the world with fire and iron and is feared by even Jupiter and the inhabitants of the underworld. Now, little baby Cupid, little baby Eros, is feared by Jupiter, who is also Zeus, is feared by all of the gods, because all of the gods are like, please don't let me fall in love. I will be irrational. I will be crazy. I'll be delulu. Things will be going off kilter for me. So the oracle of Apollo always answers in riddles, like, you'll get the opposite of what you thought you wanted, but love it. And no, Eros, who Psyche is going to end up with, is not human. And it is dragon-like, because when you're in love, you're like, well, it takes over your whole life. When you're in the erotic world, it's like, you know, it's totally got power over you. And Cupid is feared by all of the gods, even though he's just a little baby. So they accept that Psyche is going to be married to a terrible dragon. And so they put her in funeral attire. She's conveyed by a procession to the peak of a rocky crag and exposed. And they create a funeral for her. Marriage and death are a single rite of passage, a transition to the unknown. Now, the reason why marriage and death are in the same ritual here is because when you do not know how to combine the Eros, the desire, with the Psyche, then marriage will be a death. It'll be the death of a maiden, the entrance of a mother, the death of excitement, the entrance of monotony, the entrance of cycles. So when you don't have these two together in holy matrimony, then things will start to fall apart. It's the law of entropy. So I'm just going to say this in my own words here, because we could really unpack every single word. And everyone that tells this story, whether it's Wikipedia, whether it's Ovid, whether it's me, is going to say it differently. But how we're explaining this here is we're taking a second level teaching of myth and unpacking it into more human or more first level language. We're adding story, we're adding words, we're adding metaphors to be like, because the Mesoterica is a nice long gradient. So with time, more and more will come, but this is what we're all here to do as teachers, is help people understand and make it simpler using modern language. Mesoteric teachings are oral traditions. These used to be passed down orally. But now you can get a book on anything, or read a blog on anything, or watch a YouTube video on anything, and you really need someone's words, ideally made especially for you, to open that up for you. But when it opens that door, it's the metaphor of the to get into the second level of the temple, you have to be weighed and measured, and the monk has to let you in and give you the robes and enroll you. And you'll always, it's like the person who teaches you how to roll your first joint. Like, you always remember who paused and showed you how to roll a joint for the first time. And every time you roll a joint, you're like, thank you for believing in me, you know, like, yes. And I heard a joke one time, a stand-up comedian says that, like, if a woman's first blowjob, if when she gives her first blowjob, the guy just like believes in her and is like, you did great. Like for the rest of her life, she'll be like, yeah, like I can do this. But if you have like a not great experience with in such a vulnerable, choking hazard, that for the rest of your experience, you're like, I'm really bad at this. And that was definitely me. The first time I gave a blowjob, the guy was like, you don't have to do this. And for like, why couldn't he just believe in me? Why couldn't he be like, babe, like a blowjob is just a hand job licking the top, basically. It's not that much more complicated than that. You don't have to do the whole thing with your mouth. If you would just believe in me, then I probably would have had a really different, like 10 years. But that's what it's like for the teacher that opens the door to the mesoteric for you. And like, we're all laughing, but laughing helps something stick in our memory. So you might remember this in the future and laugh about it, about the blowjob that believed in you, but you will also at the same time connect it to this rite of passage, which is going from one level of teaching to the next. And it'll help you when you're initiating, because that's what initiation is. It's bringing people from one level into the next level. So basically what happens is like Psyche's brought to the top of the mountain, and the big wind, the zephyrs come and picks her up and takes her. This is like Beauty and the Beast. Takes her and deposits her in a lovely meadow where she falls asleep. So she doesn't remember how it was that she got from the top of the mountain to where she is. And she finds herself in a beautiful mansion. She finds herself in the world of Eros. But she doesn't know where she is. She doesn't know how she got there. And so she hears a voice. This is just like in Beauty and the Beast. She hears the voice, but Beauty and the Beast in the Disney tradition is encouraging you to like underneath the monster, like there's a human. So, lower your standards a little bit because they may turn out to be great. And it's a riff on Eros and Psyche, but not always that useful. Anyways, I think it would be so cool if if you have kids, there is a YouTube channel called Mokomi Kids that makes cartoons about like the Hindu myths and parables, which are pretty cool because they're just like crazy. And it's really interesting to watch as well. But I wish that somebody would do it with, or maybe they already have, but with these myths, because they're a cool thing for your kids to know about. So basically what happens is she goes to a mansion and everything is beautiful. But the problem is that she doesn't know who she's married to, but she starts to fall in love with him. She likes his vibe. The house is great. Everything that she has is wonderful. So this is where, and so she becomes, Eros starts visiting her bedroom. They're having sex. It's great. She eventually gets pregnant. And to be pregnant in the mind is to have an idea or to have a vision. So to be pregnant in the psyche with Eros's baby. So to be erotically charged about a vision of something that you want to create, something that seems really cool to you. This is what this myth is warning us about. And it's sharing your erotic world with other people and not understanding the ramifications of jealousy. So in this next part of the story, we're going to learn, the first part of the story, we learned about the magic between Eros and Psyche and the dangers of worshiping the mind instead of what created the mind. Now we're going to go into the second part of the story, which I'm going to paraphrase just so that we don't take too long. What happens is Psyche's pregnant. She loves where she's living. She loves her nighttime lover, her mystery man. She loves that. But she is starting to get a little bit lonely because she doesn't have anybody that she can like tell about this, that she can like flaunt. She's pregnant, she's in this new relationship. And when you have an erotically charged idea, that doesn't mean it's a sexual idea. It's not like, hey, furry handcuffs. What do you think? It's like, I have this vision for maybe a business that I want to create. And I want to bounce it off people that I know, because then I'll know if I actually have something too good to be true or not. And in a way, you want to be brought back down to earth. Psyche is up within her clouds in her metaphorical kingdom, you know? And so she's like, I want to go show my sisters, like, hey, look what I got. Because her sisters had been talking shit to her the whole time. They're like, why aren't you married, Psyche? Why are you married? This is my 70-year-old husband. This is my 90-year-old husband. Where's your husband? You know, because they were jealous of her. And the jealousy is always really close to home. Jealousy, once you recognize it in yourself, it's easy to spot it in other people. But when you don't recognize it in yourself, you'll think that people who are actually super jealous of you and determined to keep you small are like just trying to help you, or that like they know the real you. So it's really important to seek out jealousy in yourself, so that when people make these little judgments on you, like, here's just a minor adjustment that I wish you would make. Like, could you just not talk about your trauma? Because like, it's just not really a good look for you. You think you could do that? If you know what judgment and jealousy looks like for yourself, you'll be able to spot it in other people and be like, that little hint would be detrimental to my growth. And that's literally what somebody told me when I was building Wheels Reinvented. She's like, look, no guy's going to want to hear about your trauma. Don't make things about you and your story. People don't want to hear it. And luckily I got this person away from me, because I was like, this person's so much cooler than I am, you know? Why would they possibly be jealous of me? I thought that I wasn't on this person's radar at all, but actually they were jealous. And that little statement like took me out for a while, because I was trying not to talk about my trauma or share my story, when that was exactly what I was supposed to be doing in that moment. So Eros is like, okay, look, fine. You can bring your sisters to the mansion, because I get it. I understand that you want to take what's going on up here between us and share and have it validated, but also kind of rub it in their faces a little bit, like, hey, look what I'm doing. You didn't think I was shit, but look what I'm doing. This myth is telling us to be careful of that urge, because water only needs a little crack to get in, you know, but a little crack and all of a sudden everything's wet. So basically what happens is that her sisters come over and they were like, look, great place, great presence and everything like that, but are you telling me that you've never seen your husband before? And Eros had only one rule for her. You can't come into my room and see what I look like at night. We can have this whole relationship, but you don't get to see the long term. You don't get to see the 5 and 10-year plan for your business in a clear step-by-step way that would satisfy every prying mind. What you know is that you love it right now, and you love it when I come into your bedroom and go down on you like that. So, so don't tell anybody about it. Let's just keep it between us. You don't get the long term. So her sisters come and be like, what do you mean you don't get the long term? Like, this is crazy. And here's what you have to do, Psyche, because we're your sisters and we're married to old gray balls and we know what you want better than you know what you want. From blah, 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 blah. So here's what you have to do is you need to sneak into Eros's room when he's sleeping, and you need to shine a little candle and see what the fuck this guy actually looks like. And she's like, and if it's a monster, then you need to stab him so that he doesn't have power over you anymore. And Psyche, no matter how much she loved this guy, no matter how stoked she was, the poisonous words of jealous people close to you can fuck your shit up. And this is what this myth is telling us, because we hear all the time, oh, they're jealous. Oh, they're just jealous. This can really mess your plans up. This can completely break down a happy marriage. I just learned this, but if one person, let's say that you're in a couple, let's say that you have like 10 married friends, If one of them gets divorced, your chances of divorce go up 75%. Because, and this might be controversial to say, but something's only controversial if you're hearing it for the first time. If the couple that got divorced is the tiniest bit jealous of the people that stayed together, which is natural. Every action creates an equal and opposite reaction. But people that are jealous are always like, jealous? No, I'm living my best life out here. And I think that your husband doesn't respect your opinion. That's just what I'm saying as a divorcee. This is why your chances of getting married goes up 75%, because all it takes is a few little jealous whispers here and there to make you believe that the beautiful life that you have, and that, and yeah, everyone's life is going to look different. I'm really happy in the moment. I don't know the 5 and 10 year plan for this, but I'm just going to keep going with it because this is working for me. I don't need to be cut down to size by the people close to me. So a few jealous words, always coming from people that insist they're not jealous. They're just the only ones that really care about you. You need to watch out for this. This is what this myth is saying. So Psyche goes in to creep on him while he's sleeping. She holds the candle up over his face and she goes, oh, it's Eros, the most beautiful man in the whole world, the dream, oh my God, of anybody that you could be attracted to. Psyche and Eros together, oh, fuck off. This is what love stories are made of. But the candle drops a drop of wax and it wakes up Eros, and he wakes up and is like, what? I gave you one rule. I gave you one rule. Don't do this. The trust is broken. I can't with you. Get out of here. Now, this was very hard for Eros to do because he was Cupid, struck by his own arrow, in love, mortally in love with Psyche. Can't live without her because the erotic and the psyche need each other. The erotic is not something that happens in the outside world. It's a psychological phenomenon. So when you don't understand how the erotic works, you say that boyfriend, that relationship, that drug, that financial achievement. But the truth is that the erotic world, where you're going to go, or where you think you'll go if you have these external things, is a mental state that returns you to being a little baby like Cupid, where everything's new and fresh and you've never been hurt before. When we're dumped, when we go from being in this erotic world, when we're dumped suddenly and that world is taken away, everything is cold and gray and miserable and nothing takes it, and all we want to do is like numb and sleep and get away from this pain. When it happens suddenly, we can connect what's happened. I used to be in love, now I'm out on my ass. But when the erotic dies slowly in a relationship, things gradually cool off and you don't really know what started it. And it's hard because you're still with that person that made you feel that way one time, and you're hoping it can come back. But it's like, it takes a long time to happen. And then one day you wake up and realize, like, I was in a cold gray world yesterday. I'm in a cold gray world today. And I'm probably going to be in a cold gray world tomorrow. Like, I got to get the fuck out of here. So this is just what happens. The erotic is recharging, being reborn, stays a baby because it's being reborn all the time. But when you don't understand how this works, and you don't understand that it's the combination of Eros and Psyche together, we have a problem. So here's what happened. Psyche gets banned and goes and tells her sisters, like, oh my God, I'm out on my ass. And it wasn't a monster, it was Eros. They get jealous again. So the jealousy only gets worse. They're not satisfied. They're going to find some new shit to be jealous with you about. So Psyche returning to her sisters and being like, comfort me after your plan for me totally fucking backfired in my face. They just get more jealous, because even for that minute, she was with Eros. So we're going to skip ahead a little to here, but this is actually such a super we'll read it because it's so good. Hopefully I'm not keeping you guys for too long, but this is our last episode of Mesoterica, and I'm loving this unpacking of this session. You guys like a myth? Myths are dope, right? This is the shit I'm telling you, like myths are the fucking get down. So over the course of her wanderings, Psyche comes upon a temple of Ceres, and inside finds I feel like they're missing a part here. Basically, what happens is that Psyche is so devastated by losing Eros that she's like, the only person that can help me would be to return to my mother-in-law, Venus, Aphrodite, who's been pissed since day one, because Aphrodite's like, I don't want a mortal companion for Eros, my son, my sacred baby, like this is my fucking baby son. Nobody's gonna, no mortal with my baby son. And then Aphrodite had been pissed already at Psyche because people were worshiping Psyche instead of her. It's like a mother-in-law's worst nightmare. And then, dumbass Cupid has to cut himself with the arrow. So now he's in love with Psyche. And even though they're finally split up, happy mother-in-law, Eros is losing his shit, fucking maggot mode, rolling around in pain because he's just in love with somebody that he can't have. So Psyche has to go to Aphrodite, who's also called Venus, and be like, you need to help me. Like, I need to get his love back. And Aphrodite's like, what? Oh, do I have some tests for you, bitch? Do I have some tests for you? And so she gives her all of these really difficult. So what happens? And there's our little backstory. So Psyche finds the temple of Ceres. Ceres is like, look, and Ceres is growth. So the growth and the farm and the feast and all of that. Psyche goes and prays at this temple, please help me. But Ceres is like, look, I would love to help you, but Aphrodite put you on the blacklist. So like, I can't help you because I don't want to piss off Aphrodite. And Psyche's like, shit, I'm going to have to go and meet with Aphrodite. And Aphrodite, or Venus, revels in having this girl and having Psyche work for her now. She was like, man. Just reveling in it. And so she turns Psyche over to her two handmaids, which are Worry and Sadness, to be whipped and tortured. So what are the main sources of torture for a mind when the erotic is gone? Worry and sadness that just feed off of each other, right? You're so worried that the pain is never going to end, and then you're sad about that, and they just go, they're like a snake eating its own tail to bring in a third level or symbolic teaching, the Ouroboros of the just endlessly feeding off of each other. So Venus tears Psyche's clothes, bashes her head into the ground, mocks her for conceiving a child with her son in a sham marriage. And then the goddess gives her the first of her assignments to get back into her good graces. She throws her before a huge pile of wheat, barley, poppy seed, chickpeas, lentils, beans. I can just see it in the health food store now, soup mix. But basically just a mishkalange of like all of the fucking tiny little grains, and says, you have to, by dawn, you have to have these sorted, everything in a pile, all the poppy seeds, all the lentils, all the chickpeas, everything. So she's like, shit, nobody can help me do this. But Psyche is very, very beautiful. And beauty is power. And it's important to know this because jealous people will try and tell you that the path of beauty is not a path to enlightenment. It's literally one of the Sephirah on the tree of life. I think it's called Tiferet, is beauty. Beauty is a path to God. Beauty is a power. Even mortal beauty is a power. And to deny this, to not make your work beautiful, to be like, whatever, people should just accept my art. Why try? Why take nice looking photos for my website? Why do another round of edits on my ebook? Why improve this? Why improve that? Because it is a path to power. And so many people that are jealous of your beauty are going to tell you that this is not something that you should pay attention to at all, that it's unspiritual. Do not listen to them, because Psyche uses her beauty. Her beauty brings a fleet of insects to sort the piles for her. Beauty is power, but as we get deeper in the story, it's also could be used against you. At dawn, Venus sets aside, so Venus comes back and sees, and Venus is Aphrodite. Aphrodite comes back and sees that everything has been sorted into piles at dawn. And she's like, oh, good job, but you got someone to do this for you. This is not the awakening, that this is not how you become a god, Psyche. You can't just get other people to awaken for you. People can't sort your piles for you. Good for you for getting the task done, but this isn't going to cut it. This isn't going to impress me. So Aphrodite sets out a second task for Psyche. She says, you need to cross a river and fetch golden wool from violent sheep who graze on the other side. Violent sheep, the Greeks. I love this, right? So she has to cross this crazy river and get wool from these fucking violent sheep. The sheep are elsewhere identified as belonging to Helios, Helios being where we get the word helium, so levity, happiness. Psyche's only intention, she's like, I'm too miserable. I have to drown myself while I'm on the way there. But instead, a divinely inspired reed, nature, again, is like, look, you're naturally beautiful. Nature is going to come to your aid. It's not something that you had to work for, but we're going to help you. So the reed in the river tells her a little secret. Hey, do it like this. Get the wool that's caught on the briars instead. And don't worry about actually facing off. So nature is coming to support nature here. She's naturally beautiful. She's not and she's still descending back into, no matter how many of these tasks she overcomes, she's still in misery and wanting to kill herself because she hasn't had an awakening that was for her yet. The nature is just coming to her aid because beauty is power, but it's going to take more than this. For Psyche's third task, she's given a crystal vessel in which to collect the black water spewed by the source of the rivers Styx and Cocytus. Climbing the cliff from where the black water explodes from, she's daunted by the foreboding air of the place and dragons slithering through the rocks, and she falls into despair. She's like, I can't do it because she hasn't woken up. She hasn't found her power. So Jupiter, who's Zeus, takes pity on her and sends his eagle to battle the dragons and retrieve the water for her. So the first time she's saved by ants. The second time she's saved by a reed. The third time she's saved by Zeus, who was a man about town. Zeus is like, you cutie, like, I'll handle this, or I'll do it for you. But you can't have a man save you. This is something, the journey from Psyche to becoming Aphrodite is going to take a lot more than just good looks. Make sense? So finally, Aphrodite is like, I have to give you something that you can actually do by yourself. And this is a quest to the underworld itself. She has to take a box and obtain in it a dose of the beauty of Proserpina, queen of the underworld. Proserpina is also called Persephone. So Venus says, and she's gonna hit Psyche where it hurts. She's gonna hit Psyche where it hurts, because Aphrodite, the most beautiful of all, says, I'm just feeling a little busted lately. You know what I mean? Like, I'm just feeling a little busted lately. Psyche, can you go to the underworld? And you need to meet with Persephone, queen of the underworld. You need to go into your deepest, darkest insecurities. You need to go into your vitriol. You need to go into the dark. And what I want you to do is retrieve for me a little bit of this beauty, so that I can put it on my face and look young and beautiful again. But you are not allowed to open or even peek or take a little sip of this beauty whatsoever. I'm just feeling a little busted. So you bring it back for me. Psyche is back to square one. She's once suicidal again because she hasn't had the awakening. Men have saved her, ants have saved her, reeds have saved her, but no one can save her from being in love. And she needs to be the goddess. She needs to awaken. So the tower is like, I'm going to help. So she climbs the tower planning to throw herself off, but the tower breaks into speech and says, hey, you need to travel to Greece and seek out the place called Taenarus, where you'll find the entrance to the underworld. The airway of Dis is there, and through the yawning gates, the pathless route is revealed. Once you cross the threshold, you are committed to the unswerving course that takes you to the very Regia of Orcus. Don't go empty-handed to your shadows, but you're going to need to carry cakes of honeyed barley in both hands and transport 2 coins in your mouth. So it's kind of a riddle, but it's saying that when you don't go into the darkness unprepared. Don't go into the darkness totally unprepared, because if you're suicidal and you see no hope, you have no little trick or even just the determination to get through the other side, you're not going to make it. That's why I love Wheels Reinvented, because it's like, start and finish. We're going to hit these 7 stops and then we're going to be all done. But you have to have a strategy, because you can get stuck in your own muck and mire endlessly, you know, and that's not a very happy place to be. Magic was, you know, moderating, or not moderating, but just overseeing the community to make sure there wasn't any questions too big in Wheels Reinvented. And he's like, yeah, he's like, people are definitely a lot more serious in Wheels Reinvented than they were in Breaking Broke. And I'm like, my dear Barbie, I'm like, yeah, it's shadow work, you know, it's fucking crazy down there. So the tower says basically exactly how to get through it. We'll just do this really fast. The speaking tower warns her to maintain silence as she passes by several ominous figures: a lame man driving a mule loaded with sticks, a dead man swimming in the river that separates the world of the living from the world of the dead, old women weaving. And these, the tower warns, will seek to divert her by pleading for her help, and she must ignore them. There's a lot of distractions when you're going into your inner depth, like, let's put out this fire here, let's put out this fire there. You really want to have a clear agenda. I'm going in and I'm getting out, because everyone's going to be asking me for help. Everyone is going to be, you know, mirroring the same issue to me, and having that clear vision. I'm going in and I'm going out is key. So the cakes are treats for distracting the 3-headed dog, and the 2 coins are for Charon, the ferryman, so she can make a return trip. Everything comes to pass according to plan, and Proserpina, or Persephone, grants Psyche's humble entreaty. As soon as she re-enters the light of day, though, Psyche is overcome by a bold curiosity. And this is because Psyche used to be living in the castle. Now she's been sorting grain. She's been beaten and tortured by Aphrodite. She's been on all of these scary journeys. She's like, if Aphrodite's feeling a little busted, bruh, I am feeling a little busted. You know, maybe I just want to take a little drop of this beauty and dab it a little bit here and dab it a little bit there. So she opens the box in the hope of enhancing her own beauty, but she finds nothing inside but an infernal and Stygian sleep, which sends her into a deep and unmoving torpor, whatever that is, torpor. She passes out. Now, this is, we're going to pause the story right here. So she's lost. Psyche's lost. She failed the last mission. Just like Aphrodite knew she would. It was her insecurity, her beauty. Greatest strength, but also, you know, it got her, because it's in a sense the jealousy. Aphrodite's a little jealous of Psyche's beauty. And so she knows that she can play her up on this, you know, and be like, well, I'm feeling busted. And Psyche goes, shit, like, I'm feeling busted too. Aphrodite doesn't want her to be with her son, because Aphrodite wants her son to be with another god. But we talked in the beginning of this course about the Enneagram and how when you're so tired and you're at the end of the mission, that God reaches back and grabs you and pulls you to it. We use the metaphor of seeing the baby's head when you're capped out in birth, the metaphor of seeing an oasis when you're starving in the desert, the metaphor of seeing the finish line when you're running a marathon, just seeing the end in sight by law. And this law is outlined here. God reaches back and grabs you and pulls you to it. When you've given it your best shot, you're going to find, and it hasn't worked, you find that you're not in it alone. And if you ask for help, it will always be granted to you. And most of the time, even if you don't ask for help, nobody in a marathon being like, please let the finish line be around the corner, has moved the finish line closer to them. It's just when you're really giving it your best. And of course, humans are going to make mistakes. You are forgiven for your mistakes. God will reach back and grab you after you've worked so hard. So trust that you're not in it alone. So meanwhile, Cupid's wound has healed into a scar and he escapes his mother's house by flying out of a window. When he finds Psyche, he draws the sleep from her face and replaces it in the box and then pricks her with an arrow that does no harm. Love comes back to save the day. And he says, let's, outsmart my mom here because I love you. And it doesn't matter if it's like against the rules, like we're going to be fine. Lifts her in the air and takes her to present the box to Venus. And look how happy these two look together. Oh, they're hot, right? They're cute, right? Look at her. She's like, yes, you saved me. The Psyche needs the erotic. He then takes his case to Zeus, who gives his consent in return for Cupid's help whenever a choice maiden catches his eye. So Zeus is also Jupiter, and Zeus is such a the gods are so duddy, he's like, all right, Cupid, like you can have your girlfriend, but like you need, anytime I think a girl's hot, you have to go fucking poke her with your arrow for me. And he's like, okay, and it's really interesting that it's very interesting and we do this in erotic wealth. So like in erotic and autoerotic wealth, give you guys a little like clip note, the sexual magic ritual, you call in a deity like pretty early into the process. You work really closely with the deity, but inevitably one of the experiences that the deity goes through, which is either documented or undocumented, will mirror your own sexual trauma. So when you create pleasure out of something and spiritual pleasure out of something that caused you a lot of pain, it no longer has power over you. And people in the kink community understand this because when you make a kink about something that once hurt you, a little bit of poison is the cure. The story no longer has any power over you anymore. So inevitably, the sacred story of the god is exactly what heals you. And you come from just like being interested in some of these deities to really relying on them. And it alchemizes trauma. And the shame that occurs from trauma, whether you were the victim or the abuser, is what prevents you from receiving more. So it's like this crazy way of just like removing the trauma. But it's really interesting because in these stories of the gods, like there's so many stories in there of rape. There's so many stories of like being a dirty god. There's stories of cheating. There's stories of, and some of these stories are documented. And then with our case studies, we saw a few really interesting situations. Basically the people receive the story way before we talk about trauma or anything like that, because that's the unconscious that, we can't just go right into the unconscious. But it's always been really interesting to see that like these mythological creatures are really there, really working with the people. And then when it all comes together, when it's like, how is it that fucking 8 lessons ago, the gods showed you this story that exactly mirrors this one that you really didn't want to talk about, that we would get to maybe 3 or 4 months in the future. So it's pretty interesting. But there's story. The gods are like, in myth, the gods are not God from the exoteric. Like I'm light and love and I make no mistakes. Like these gods are humans. They have human tendencies like revenge and jealousy, and they make mistakes and they are tricksters. And like this is all showing us that like you can achieve enlightenment in this lifetime. When you stop seeing a battle of good, bad, and right, wrong, and you see everything as God, you see yourself as a part of that totality. It comes naturally. And then all things, whether chaotic or ordered or neutralizing, are expressions of the divine, just like you. When everything is on one side, nothing is against you. So you have God powers because there's nothing that opposes you. Everything is on your side. So he takes his case to Zeus. Zeus is like, yes, if I can fucking be in love with, if anyone I want will be in love with me, then fine. And Psyche becomes a god. Psyche is finally made a god. Eros and Psyche are together. Now, the most beautiful thing is that they have a child, and that child's name is Hedone. And Hedone is where we get the word hedonism. Hedone is pleasure. When you combine Eros with Psyche, what you get is an eternal lifetime of pleasure. And the other word here is voluptas. And voluptas is where we get the word voluptuous. When something's voluptuous, there is pleasure to be had there. So to recap this story, just point by point, in the first one, we learned to not worship the mind, but to worship the creator of the mind. The second part that we learn is that when you have an idea that's meaningful and beautiful to you, you don't need to share it with other people. Validate it for yourself. Live your life, queen. Live your life. Don't get or share it with the whole world, but you're going to get it one step at a time. And if people are demanding, this is the card of the Fool in the tarot. Keep your eyes on heaven. The next step will be presented to you. This is where the journey of the tarot begins. But if there are people around there that are like, I'm really going to need to see your 5 and 10-year plan, avoid these people. In Erotic Wealth, we do all the work privately, and then we have a big reveal at the end when there's been too much momentum to go backwards, so that you feel solid about it. It's not up for review. And be really conscious of the people that are cutting you down to size. These people will eventually leave your life, but you can hold them close. When it comes to the growth of the mind, no one can help you. No one can save you. You're going to have to go into it by yourself. And beauty is power. But when you rely too much on your beauty and you think that it's all you have, it will be taken away. So diversify. Be beautiful and smart. Be beautiful and strong. Almost ready, my love. Beautiful and smart. Beautiful and strong. Make sense? And then the final is that, like, even if you do your best, God will pull you the last little bit of the way. The relationship, the ultimate love, the ultimate source of pleasure, the source for pleasure, the parents of pleasure is the god of Eros with the mortal Psyche. God comes to you. This combination of the erotic world of desire, which is sacred and divine, with the human psyche is where we get pleasure, lasting pleasure for the rest of our lives. So I'm really happy that we got this story today. Welcome to the Mesoteric realm. Welcome to myth and parable. Everything will come to you in its own way. And when we just finished like a really gnarly deadline written work bender. And at some point I will do like a Mesoteric where we just do like one of these every couple of weeks. I'm not really ready to do that just yet, but I will let you guys know as soon as I have it. And who knows, maybe the best way to just keep in touch with like what I'm doing and what I'm up to, be on my newsletter like you already are, watch me on social like you already do. But I could do this forever, just like unpacking one story at a time. So this was great. I want to thank you all so much for being in Mesoterica. I want you to welcome you to the Mesoteric realm. This is you're going to be here for a long time. And if you guys missed the first part of this call, we just talk about what you can expect as you grow over the next year. So thank you so much for, I'm paying to hear your version of all the myths. And this was just the Greeks. There's the Norse, there's the African, there's the Egyptian, like all of this stuff is really cool. For the Christian to understand Jesus's parables, the book, The New Man, I'm telling you, that's a get down too. The New Man by Maurice Nicoll is good for that. Any I'm trying to think of how I learned the Hindu myths, but I just learned them a little bit one at a time. If you read about them, they'll make more sense to you. But I learned a little bit from Vimalanda, but it's really just been piece by piece with that. For Greek myths, Ovid Metamorphoses. For Norse myths, I've really just looked around online. For Egyptian myths, The Passion of Isis and Osiris by Jean Houston is really good. For African stories of the Orishas, you really need to hear those ones verbally because they're just two-dimensional. In a book, you're not going to get anything from them. They'll be like, and then the leopard walked into the jungle and Obatala killed it, and that's why the leopard has spots. And you're like, what? I don't get it. But if you work with any Ifa, Lukumi, Isheshe, like any of those, they'll tell you a story about it that'll make a lot more sense. Yeah, I'll write all of these names when I'm posting the replay right here. Thanks. I'm gonna put this up on my YouTube. I'm gonna just put this story up because I had Ratchet Bible stories, but I'm gonna do Ratchet Mythology and put this one up. So I love it. And I'll make sure to get that whole list of everything that I just said for you guys. So thank you so much. This was a really fun workshop for me. And the whole reason, I wanted to do this, let's just talk about myth and parables from the beginning. But I was like, I have to initiate people into the Mesoteric first, because if we don't, then it's just going to be kind of complicated because there's just no good, bad, right, wrong in those myths. So we will see, but love you all so much. If you guys would be so kind as to write a review too, that would also be really helpful. Just your experience here. Other people going forward will want to know if this is something that they should do or not. So if you have any feedback or anything, please just put it in the chat. And thank you all so much. I will see you guys hopefully on Erotic Wealth, maybe. Love you and see you soon.